A young girl's face peered out at them. Her eyes are wary, but not fearful. "What do you want?" she said, her voice guarded. Derek was at a loss of what to say in that moment. He hadn't really thought beyond just knocking on the door. Words seemed far away from him as he looked closer at the girl. He could only see her shoulders and head, but there was something strange about her dress. It looked like something you would see in a movie about the frontier. He peered inside and saw the rest of the house followed suit with the dated fashion. There was an oil lamp burning by the door. It was probably what she used to light her way. Did this house really not run on electricity? He looked back at the others. They only looked back at him with blank confusion. They might have been thinking 100 other things. Did they notice what he did? He can't be the only one. He also noticed something about the property itself. There was the house, but no road. It had been the same with the house they saw back home. Wait, why was he thinking like that? As if home was somehow thousands of miles off, or hundreds of years off. He shuddered, turning back to the little girl who was looking quite peeved to be kept waiting. "What business do you have here?" she said in a more demanding tone. Derek pointed to himself. "My name is Derek, and these are my friends, Kyle, Ryan, and Amber," he said. The others waved. She did not wave back, remaining wary. Then he said to her, "I think we're lost." She looked at him for a long moment. She seemed to mull over his words, and he wondered if she wasn't just going to slam the door in their faces. A shadow came to stand in the doorway of the next room. It loomed over the girl, casting her almost completely in shadow. The imposing figure, Derek figured, must be her father. She looked back for a moment. It seemed that there was some sort of wordless exchange between father and daughter, because a moment later his shadow retreated and she turned back to them. Her face was brighter than it had been. She was even smiling. "Please come in," she said, stepping back and swinging the door open. She gestured with her hand for them to enter, offering a demure bow. Her pigtails fell over her shoulders. For a moment, Derek thought he saw something under the hem of her fair-skinned neckline. Something dark. Derek was interrupted as Amber brushed past him. "You're blocking the doorway, moron," she said. The others followed her. Derek cast another look at the girl, but the back of her neck was no longer visible. She was standing up straight, looking at him with doleful eyes. She seemed somehow different now. Her attitude, and also something else that Derek could not place. Despite the feeling of trepidation that gnawed at his thoughts, he stepped over the threshold and into the house. He had not so much as taken one step when the door slammed shut behind him, making every one of his friends jump. Derek turned back, his eyes wide. "Why did you do that?" he said, his voice coming out harsh. The girl only looked at him. As she did, she raised her hand and grasped a lockbolt without needing to see it. She slid it across the door. "It's not safe out there. It hunts," she said. Before anyone could respond, she walked towards the next room, saying, "Come, eat. My father wishes to speak to you." She disappeared into the next room, leaving Derek and the others looking at each other in stark wonder. Amber sniffed the air. "Something smells delicious," she said, and was about to follow after the girl when Ryan hauled her back by the collar. "What are you doing?" Ryan said in a fierce whisper. Amber shook him off. "We need to get out of here right now." Kyle raised an eyebrow at him. "You want to go back out there?" he said, incredulous. "I'd rather take my chances in here. They seem like they know something. Maybe we can get some answers." "And I'm hungry," Amber said. They all turned to look at Derek. He clenched his fists. Putting on pants is just really tough on everybody today. He sighed. "Ryan," he said, I don't like it any more than you do, but we can't go on much longer without food. Once we get our strength back and some know-how, we can decide what to do." Ryan shook his head. "Something is wrong with this place," he said and pointed his finger towards the next room. "Just like it was at the house." Derek knew he was right. Just looking at their surroundings told him that they were in deep trouble. Still, going back the way they came was nothing short of suicide. They would have to face that thing again. He was sure that the girl was referring to it when she mentioned hunting. "If anything, even Twitch is a way we don't like," Derek said, looking around at all of them, his tone low and grim. "We get out fast. We fight our way out if we have to." Amber gave a slow nod. "I'm reading that loud and clear," she said. Ryan looked on the verge of crying. He nodded his head a couple of times. Kyle sighed. He hated violence. He was apt to settle things with some happy chuckles rather than angry knuckles. "You don't have to be afraid." The girl's voice came from behind them. Each of them jumped like rabbits. Red came into Derek's vision. He could have strangled her in that moment. Instead, he turned around with what he hoped was a non-threatening expression. He forced a smile on his face. "We appreciate it," he said, then said with a tired shrug, "I guess we're ready now." The girl led them into the other room. It was open from one end of the house to the other. The fireplace was in the center of the far wall, a fire roaring. Derek immediately noticed something odd, though. The fire was blazing, yet he could barely feel the heat from it. It was as if it wasn't completely real. On their right was the dining table where the family sat, watching them. On the left was a sitting room with chairs, a rudimentary sofa, and a large wooden chest. There were stairs going to a second floor. Derek heard Amber smack her lips and rub her hands together. He wished she didn't show her eagerness, yet he could not deny his own want as the smell of the food hit him. The meat, bread, and cooked vegetables smelled wonderful in a way he had never known before. He figured it must be because he was starving. The mother, seeing them hesitate, beckoned them over, a warm smile on her face. The daughter took her place again, her demeanor pleasant and inviting. The boy was kind-eyed as well. The father stood by the fireplace. He was gazing into the flames with a far-off look in his eye. "Come, sit, won't you please?" the mother said. She waved at the newcomers and smiled wide. Derek was suddenly struck by her teeth. They were perfect, white and straight. Wow, what a beautiful smile. Still, it creeped him out a little. That smile was almost too genuine, or maybe it was all in his mind. Amber pushed by Derek and the others and took a seat next to the boy. She pointed at his plate. "I want everything you got, kid," she said. "Amber!" Ryan said, hissing. "Where did you learn your manners from?" "Of course," the boy said, giving that same awful, perfect smile that his mother wore. "Have as much as you want. We have plenty." Amber wasted no time in loading up her plate. By the time Derek and the others sat down, her plate was at capacity. She began to dig in, the air filled with her moans of delight. "Oh, my Lanta," she said through a full mouth. "That is absolutely divine." Ryan and Kyle looked at Derek. Derek shrugged and started to put things on his plate as well. He couldn't resist. He was just so hungry. Obviously, the others felt the same, because soon they were all heaping food on their plates. Derek took a bite of meat and dropped his utensils, which clattered onto the table. His eyes went wide, and a loud moan escaped his lips. "Amazing," he said. He looked down at the food, picked up his fork and knife, and began to shovel food into his mouth with ravenous intensity. Kyle and Ryan made similar exclamations about dinner, and soon the air was filled with the chinking, clattering, and profuse commentating of enthusiastic dining. All of them forgot their worries, for a little while at least. When Derek was more or less satisfied, he paused his eating long enough to notice that the family was not touching the food. He elbowed Kyle, who grunted at him, chewing on a leg of meat. Derek elbowed him again, and this time Kyle looked up. "What?" he said. "Can't you see I've died and gone straight to heaven?" That got a wry chuckle out of Ryan. He rolled his eyes as he stuffed a garlic bread knot into his mouth. Amber was also done eating, and she was looking around, wary. Derek thought that maybe she noticed it too. He looked behind them. The father was in the same place, still leaning against the mantel, staring at the flame. A thought came to Derek's mind. He's dead. He's just been propped up because he's nothing but a corpse. Panic swelled in him, and just as he was about to say something, the man moved. It was as if he could sense Derek's thoughts. The thought filled him with dread. The man turned to face them. Kyle and Ryan must have sensed his eyes on them because they turned around in their seats. For a long moment, there was silence. Derek dared not break it, thinking that something drastic might happen if they said something wrong. Out of the corner of his eyes, he noticed that the rest of the family's smiles were now frozen on their faces, as if they were lifelike and life-sized dolls that have been turned off. Their eternally cheery expressions made him feel like screaming. "Now that you've eaten, it's time to talk," he said. "Come into the sitting room." No one, not even Amber, argued, though she did fill a mug with apple juice before getting up from the table. The man sat by the darkened window at the far end of the room. Derek and Kyle each took chairs, and Ryan and Amber sat side by side on the couch. They waited for the man to speak. They waited for what seemed like a long time. "How did you come to this place?" he said at last. They all looked at each other. Then all eyes turned to Derek. He thought of what to say. He wondered if he should tell everything in full. He wondered if he could trust the intentions of this stranger. "We came through the house," Derek said. "My friends and I got trapped." "Something was after us," Ryan said. "A red mist. A monster." The man nodded. "I have heard some version of this story before," he said. Derek was confused by his meaning. "I suppose you all must have questions." "Yes," Derek said. Then, thinking of the rest of the group, he added, "But we really just want to know how to get back home." "The only way back out is the way you came in," the man said. "You have to go back through the hunting ground." "Ye hunting ground," Derek said. "That is what we call it," the man said. "That is where it hunts. We stay away from that place as best we can. Sometimes strangers such as yourselves find yourself inside its domain, though it has been a long time since I have seen travelers come through. Many don't survive." "What is it?" Kyle said. The man shrugged. His eyes had a defeated look that Derek thought was sorrow. There was something else there too, something dark. It made his flesh crawl. "No one knows," the man said. "All we know is that we should have listened to the red men who warned us about Greywood Forest." "Red men?" Ryan said. "You mean Native Americans?" The man gave him an odd look. "Yes, the natives. When we came to settle the land, we thought that we would have trouble with them. Then we learned that they have long abandoned this land. We thought it a blessing. Now we know what it really is. This land is cursed." "Because of the hunter," Derek said. The man opened his hands in an "I don't know" gesture. "It may be that it is here because of the curse, or it is the cause of the curse. Whatever the case, it is evil," he said. "If it's so evil and bad, then why don't you and everyone else band together and kill it?" Amber said. They were all startled when the man dropped his head into his hands and began to weep. They all looked at each other, not knowing what to do or say. Luckily, The man got himself back under control. He wiped his eyes on his shirt sleeve. "Many have tried to kill the hunter," the man said. "The only result was its wrath. It was too high a price to pay, and so now no one dares try." "No way," Kyle said. "And we have to face that thing again if we want to go home?" The man nodded. "As far as we know, yes," he said. "Though I don't know of anyone who has ever succeeded in surviving the hunter's domain more than once." Derek chewed his lip. This was getting worse and worse. What were they going to do? "Sir," Ryan said, "may I ask you a few weird questions?" The man surprised them all by giving a humorless smile. "Yes, you have traveled to the past. It is the year 1718, he said, then added, "And this place is hell."